All right, let's see if I still remember how to do this. Whew. Hello everybody, and welcome to a long overdue new video from Gun Gamers. My name is Eric, and it's been a while since we've just sat down on the couch and talked about something to do with Airsoft, so that's what we're doing today. The mood struck me, and I've got some free time in between all my other projects, day job, running the games, staffing other people's games, attending games. Everything's busy, but busy in good ways, but here we are, and I've got a new video, and what we're going to talk about today is actually relevant to what I've been busy with, and that's going to be how to get involved in staffing and running Airsoft games. And this is actually one of the more common questions that I get when I talk to people. I have been fortunate enough that throughout my long journey with the hobby of Airsoft, I have been asked to work different games all the way from like local events out at local fields, all the way to traveling across the country to work at the Desert Fox events games, to anything regional, to even being invited to do cadre work from Milsom West, which is all just very different jobs, very different things, but there's a commonality between them and a skill set transfer between them and a kind of process of getting into it that I think applies to a wide variety of things. So if you are one of those guys whose idea of fun is being the dungeon master for all the airsofters on the field, this video is going to be for you. If you want to get involved in running games, hopefully I'll be able to give you a crash course on some of the skills needed, some of the ways to get into it, and some of the things to expect as you go through your journey with actually being a staff member rather than just being a player. So some background on how I got involved like way back in the day. Probably in 2009 was when I really started going to games at my local fields. Like I had kind of been involved in just backyard airsoft with some high school friends. We had a piece of property outside of town and we would just go run private games. And even when I was involved in that, I always liked being the guy who would write up the scenario, write the games. I would role play as the hostage if needed. So I think part of my mentality with Airsoft has always been that I like to be the guy who helps to make the game happen for other people. And if you want to get involved in staffing games, that has to be your mentality. You have to be able to look at it from an outside perspective, divorce your own fun from the situation, unless your own fun is making sure everyone else is having fun, and really just think about it from a planning, logistical, and dungeon master level, essentially. You need to be able to think about things from a game admin perspective, from a game design perspective, and not just from a player perspective. And those are different perspectives. A player perspective, your only job is to go out, play the game, and make sure that you and your buddies have fun. It is not your problem necessarily whether or not the scenario is balanced, whether or not all the pieces are going to be in place when certain things are supposed to happen, whether or not there are enough people on one side or the other. All those things aren't your problem. But when you are being a staff member and when you're looking at running games, now it is your problem of, hey, what's the scenario? How's it going to play? Is there more complexity needed to try to make it more fun for a larger number of people, or is there less complexity needed because my players don't want to deal with a lot of complexity? To a certain extent, it takes a certain level of emotional intelligence to be able to look at, here's what I'm planning, here's what I'm looking to do, and here's what my players are going to be receptive to. So that was kind of how I started, and I'm not going to be the guy who says that I nailed all those things off the rip, right? I have been very fortunate to have a lot of repetitions and a lot of practice. I started playing Airsoft at all in like 2004, 2005 in the backyard sense, and I started doing the high school games with my buddies in like 2006, 2007. So it's been since then that I've had the opportunity to build up repetitions, but that's really the mindset that you want to build to even get started, is the ability to look at things from that perspective and understand that that's what is expected of you in that role, to make sure that people want to play your games and are going to keep coming back and keep having fun with that. So I started playing at Hunters Creek Airsoft in like 2009, I think was the first time I really attended one of Kyle's games. And Kyle, my now business partner for Gun Gamers Productions, was the owner and the main host of games at Hunters Creek at that time. It was like right after the collapse of Western New York Airsoft League, or as that whole thing was spiraling downward. And that was when I first got into playing at field games. And I attended a few games just as a player. But pretty quickly, Kyle and I kind of clicked personally, and he and I had a lot of discussions about like the way the games worked and the way that things were run. And that was kind of how I got invited by Kyle. And he's like, okay, well, next time you come out, why don't you lead one of the teams? And your job is essentially to make sure that your players on your team always know what's going on, always have a semblance of a plan, and just like play through the scenario as I wrote it, And it's not that his scenarios were railroady, but that there were steps that were the objectives that needed to be accomplished. And, you need to make sure that players know what those steps are and play the game that way. And that's one of your main jobs if you're an in-play staff member, right? One of your main jobs is just to make sure your players know what the heck is going on. Because you can brief players before the game, you can send things out that they can read, like an op board and a scenario document, but in-game, things are going to happen, things are going to evolve, things are going to change, there's going to be contingencies for if X, Y, or Z happens X, Y, or Z way, and you as a playing staff member need to be that point of contact for players where, yes, you're in-game and you're playing the game, but your job still is not just the fun of like you and your friends. Your job is to make sure that everyone in your group is having fun playing the scenario, playing the game. And obviously if you're doing like an indoor game or you're doing like SpeedQB, these rules don't really apply. But even then, if you're like a ref, it's the same thing, You need to know the rules. You need to know what needs to happen. You need to know the win state. So it's just that ability to know the rules, be able to guide people through those rules, and be able to read ahead of time and know this is the game, this is what's expected of me and the players, this is what I need to do to keep everybody on task and to keep things running smoothly. So that was how I kind of got into the like playing staff at a local field role. And then I started like working with Kyle and helping him to workshop some of the scenarios. And I did like the back end out of play admin stuff for a couple of games. And that was when I got into the really planning games top to bottom. And I wrote a design doc and I sent it to Kyle and I said, hey, this is something I'm interested in running. I think it sounds fun. What do you think? And this is where you develop the skill set of being able to organize your thoughts, being able to put together a document that you can send to everybody involved that gives a rough outline of the expectations of play, the objectives in the scenario, what you're doing, what your rules are, what your contingencies are, and being able to communicate that to other people and a wide variety of players. And writing a rule set is very much the same thing. If you like read the GGP rule set, it's very long, and actually shortening it is one of my projects for the coming season. But if you look at the way that all those things are written, if you read the whole thing, it's meant to be very comprehensive and answer as many questions as possible, and you need to be able to do that. You need to be able to look at a document and think, does this communicate my intention and the overall boundaries, like the left and right guidelines of play? Does it communicate that as clearly as possible? And then you need to have the humility as well to be able to send that off to trusted people who are going to be helping you with this project and say, does this make sense? So, that was kind of my trajectory of going from, getting into backyard games, kind of running and getting into like the back end of the backyard games, going to local fields, becoming a player staff member, and then becoming like a game admin. And, granted, this is on a local scale. None of our games are really bigger than 80, maybe 100 people. But if you have people coming out and you're able to attract, 50 or 60 players to a game, don't let the comparisons to AMS and Milsim West fool you. If you have a group of people who are into your game, as big or small as it is, you're doing something right and you're doing a good job. It takes a lot of mental energy to run these projects, and it gets very, very easy to get in your own head about like how well you're doing compared to other people. Don't worry about that. Build your game for your audience and then be able to look at, okay, is this something I want to grow to maybe where it's going to be more economically rewarding if you want to turn it into a business, or is this something I just want to do for me and my friends? And that's another thing you really have to identify. I ran games as a hobby on the local scale for 10 plus years before I ever decided I was going to launch, my own event promotion gig and rent venues and do all that on my own. I literally just had like handshake agreements with local fields that I would come in, I would run the game, and I'd get like $5 a head. And that's something that is a very easy way to get into running games. If you have a local field, if you have a local scene already, if you have local field owners, talk to them. And if you have a strong concept and you have a strong idea of something that you want to do and you can communicate it effectively and you have like a rule set and you have legitimate things put together that someone can look at and think, oh, this is not some half-baked total nonsense that nobody wants to play. Clearly this has like some thought and it sounds fun to not just me, but like also other people. That's going to be your easiest foot in the door for if you want to start running games. If you don't have a local field, to be honest, if you're not doing it as a business, all you need is a piece of private property you have exclusive access to, a group of friends who are willing to consistently wear their eye protection, and the ability to just get a group of people together on a given day and go play Airsoft. As long as you're doing things safely and you're not breaking any local laws, we've kind of gone in this weird direction where people are so afraid of backyard airsoft, right? Because it's got such a negative connotation that we almost forget that this doesn't need to be a hobby that only takes place at like insured fields. As long as everybody is there and no one's like doing this as a business and it's just a group of friends who all trust each other. Yeah, you might be assuming some risk and technically like somebody could sue somebody if they really wanted to, but you can just go play Airsoft with you and your friends. Someone owns some land and they have a free weekend where nobody else is going to be there because it's like their family's private property. Get you and 8 to 10 other guys together and run fire team on fire team games and have a great time. You do not need to have an established local community with 80 to 100 players on any given weekend in order to play Airsoft. So to recap, have the right mindset, have the emotional intelligence to be able to communicate what you're doing and to be able to like talk to people one-to-one and as a group. Have a strong concept, have the wherewithal to know what your role is, know what your job is, and then, be able and willing to work your way through that process and gather the necessary experience and then communicate an idea of what you want to run or what you bring to a game. It just takes showing up, being enthusiastic, having like the ability to demonstrate competence, to put it bluntly, and having that confidence and, to be honest, just the right attitude. So that was how I got into it on the local scale. How I got into it on the larger scale, where I started working like Bad Blood and Desert Fox events and other games like that, is quite frankly related to the YouTube channel. I got a lot of opportunities from running this YouTube channel, which is so funny now that I neglect it so hard. But I was connected to Jet through the YouTube channel, and he invited me to command Southern Syndicate when they came up to EMR the first time. And Jet messaged me. It was like, hey man, are you interested in commanding Southern Syndicate? And that was how I got involved in doing Desert Fox events. Bad Blood was much the same thing. You know, I got a message and it was, hey, are you interested in doing Bad Blood? And I was like, yeah, sure thing. And I've like gone to that game 2 or 3 times since, just because I am always so busy in the summers. And to put it bluntly, like, Bad Blood's not my style of game. It's very chaotic. It's very open play. There's 4 factions, and honestly, looking back on my appearances at Bad Blood, there are things I would do so much differently with the experience I have since. But that's neither here nor there. I could do a whole video filled of like the way I've handled things in the past that I would do differently, that I regret now. You know, the benefit of 7 or 8 years of hindsight, right? But that was how I got involved in those things, was getting invited through the YouTube channel. And people just started asking me like, oh, will you do X, Y, or Z for this game? Or then I met people at other events and I would meet those people while I was doing these other events. And I got asked to come out and command teams at some of the Sector 7 games in Ohio. And it was all really super cool, but that's how it kind of snowballs, right? Like you get started and you get good at it. I like to think I am definitely much better now. Like I said, things I would do differently 7 or 8 years ago could be a whole video, but you get good at it, you get better at it, you start working on your ability to just continuously improve, and then you develop those skills and people see you in action. People hear about like how you did at X, Y, or Z event. People see you on the YouTube channel if you're like me and you have something of a social media presence, and it just snowballs from there. And then it was 2022 or late 2021 actually, and Kyle and I had gone to a lot of the larger games, and Kyle just would not stop pestering me for like a year straight actually. And he says to me, Eric, we know what it takes to run games at this level. We know what it takes to rent a venue and get insurance and like have player staff and design a scenario and write a rule set. We can obviously do this. This is something that we've always wanted to do ever since we we're running Hunters Creek games together. Kyle was always like, wouldn't it be cool if we did this someday? And I was like, yeah, it'd be so cool. Let's do it sometime. And finally I caved. I was like, all right, yeah, okay, Kyle, let's do it. And we founded Gun Gamers Productions. We made the LLC. So if you want to make this a business and you want to start renting venues and you want to start like legitimately scaling up, you need an LLC. I recommend you just personally, we just used a lawyer to found the LLC. That's probably your easiest way to do it. You need to be able to file to collect sales tax if you're going to be doing anything sales taxable. You need to know what your taxes are going to look like. You need to know what your liabilities are going to look like. You need to know what your insurance vendor is going to be like and write your rules with your insurance vendor in mind. And then you need to have venues that you can rent, know what your budget is, know roughly what your expected return is and all your costs. So that's where you get into like, now you're running this as a business. But talking about it, again, the business of all this could be a video on its own, right? And the things that we did at the time that I would do differently could be a video on its own. But when you're talking about scaling into like getting involved in running events as a business, now you need to know your business skills. You need to know how to write a budget. You need to know how to work within a budget. You need to know how to manage people. You need to know how to work a ticketing system. You need to know how to do rosters and email and communications and website. So know those skills, know what you want to do, and then just do that, and don't cheap out. This is one of my biggest pet peeves with Airsoft event promoters lately, is the amount of AI generated dog shit looking event flyers blows my mind. I'm gonna sound like such an elitist, but at least like hire somebody who's competent with graphic design to do your event posters, right? Like, don't just AI generate Santa wearing night vision because it's your Christmas event. A million people have done it before. A million people are gonna do it after you, and it looks cheap. It looks cheap, and maybe a lot of airsofters don't care, but I see it. I'm like, you could have at least like dressed in a costume or something and got a cool photo and then like competently designed a flyer over it. I don't know, but don't cheap out on those skills, right? Like all that stuff, all of your aesthetic and your marketing, all of that is going to be part of how you present yourself and part of how you attract players. So don't cheap out, put the work in to represent yourself well. You deserve it, damn it. Your games are cool and you deserve to look cool marketing your games. Am I right? Yes, I am. But it was after founding Gun Gamers Productions that then I got invited to do more with Desert Fox events like flying cross country, and then I got invited to do the Milsim West cadre stuff. You're working at a scale now where there's 500 or 600 players and it's a big game. You need to be able to work under pressure. You need to be able to not be an unreasonable level of nervous, right? Like being nervous to present yourself to a whole bunch of people, like being anxious in front of crowds is natural, but you need to be able to work around it at the very least, and you need to be able to present yourself well to groups of players, and you need to be able to keep large groups of people on task. Because now you're not commanding like a team of 40 people like at the Hunters Creek games. Now you're commanding a team of like 300 or 400 people, and you need to make sure that all of them are having a good time. And you've got some help, especially if you're like me and you had Sean Prosen with you at the last Desert Fox game. My God, that dude's a stud. But when you've got help, that helps, but you still need to be able to do the work, right? And I'm not gonna sit here and talk to you about being the most badass tactical commander possible. Like all the tactical stuff, all a video on its own, but you need to have an understanding of it. You need to know the basics of how to talk to people in a way that not only are they going to have fun, but they can also be reasonably effective within the game. And that's especially true for when you're doing something like a hardcore Milsim event. Like Milsim West expects its staff members to know the basics of the Ranger Handbook, to know the battle drills, to know the formations, to be able to teach patrol base etiquette, to be able to plot a route and do land navigation and get people where they need to be going and not get lost. Those are your more advanced skills. As hell, even for like the Gun Gamers Productions games, I need people to be able to get where they're going and not get lost and be able to drop me a grid coordinate so I can go and bring them supplies as White Cell, right? Like, you need to have those more advanced skills of working with larger groups of people, keeping larger groups of people on task, organizing people into squads, into platoons, into fire teams, and then organizing a company potentially, and communicating a plan on that scale to that group of people using tactics that will give them a reasonable chance of success, and know how to reconsolidate those people, re-equip those people, and communicate through a chain of command with those people. That is where your advanced skills really start to come into play. And those are the things that you also need to know if you're going to start staffing at that level, at that type of event. And those are all skills that are super duper complex and technical on their own, so just watch a bunch of Tactical Forge videos and he'll explain it way better than I possibly can in the confines of this video. And this is where we talk about if a military career helps. You know, not every airsofter was in the military, right? Like, a lot of people who play airsoft have no interest in ever joining the military. That, to put it bluntly, that's me. You know, I think real war is stupid and lame and I don't want to do it, but fake war is super fun and cool. So I do the fake war. But does a military career help when you are doing all these things? Absolutely. There's a reason a lot of event promoters will look at predominantly hiring veteran staff, because most people don't have the repetitions in a professional environment to be able to run people through those things at a high level. So yeah, if you were in the military, you've got a leg up. And if you weren't in the military, read the Ranger Handbook, read field manuals, watch Tactical Forge, and practice these things in your own gameplay and practice these things with your friends so that you can have an understanding of how to enact them with groups of people. Because when you go and start trying to staff at other events, that makes a difference if you can be competent. So that was a lot of word vomit, and I hope that I made some sense throughout the course of it. This video is gonna be like 20 some minutes long, and nobody wants to watch something much longer than that, I'm sure. But yeah, this has been my crash course on kind of how I got into event hosting and working events, the skills that you're gonna need, the things that are gonna help you develop those skills, and, you know, some of the ways that maybe you can get into it yourself. And I cannot stress enough, run games. Be willing to run games, even if you're not gonna make any money at it, even if there's no scene in your area. If you build it, they will come. Every airsoft scene throughout the world has started because somebody picked up an airsoft gun and shot it at their friend and said, this is fun, let's do it with some more people. So if you don't have a local airsoft scene, be the person to build it. If you have a local airsoft scene and you want it to keep going strong, be one of the people to work in it. And if you see local or large scale events that you think could be better in X, Y, or Z way, and you have an actionable plan and the capability to bring that value to those events, gosh darn it, show up, be good at it, demonstrate competence, and one of these days, maybe I'll be in your platoon at Milsim West while you're my platoon sergeant, right? Who knows? Or maybe I'll be hiring you for Gun Gamers Productions. There's so many avenues for all the different ways that you can be involved in the back end of this hobby, and gosh darn it, we need an economy of game masters. So be part of it, be part of the solution, add value to your scene, build something cool, and hopefully I will see you on the field. So once again, I have been Eric. This is the YouTube channel Gun Gamers. No promises on what the next video is, but hopefully I have just as much energy presenting it. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you on the field. We've got a couple of Gun Gamers Productions games left this year. We've got the NAF Underworld, which is in July 19th to 20th at Zulu 24 Airsoft in New Windsor, New York. It is our immersive role-playing game format. So think Freeside from Fallout New Vegas. That's the vibe we're going for. It's going to be super duper fun. Personally, that's my favorite format. I really, really love role-playing games. And then October 10th to 12th, 2025, we have Echoes of Thorn Valley, which is going to be our 24-hour game on that Saturday to Sunday. And that Friday, we have a vendor row, camping, we're gonna have a food truck out, and we also have our Friday night shoot house portion, which is gonna be like a ready or not style scenario, where whoever runs through it the fastest without killing the civilians with the least casualties is gonna get a cool patch. So, you know, that's my involvement now, being a game master in this hobby, which is actually one of my favorite ways to be involved in this hobby, right? But that's a whole rant unto itself. I love getting to play the game. I love going to Zulu 24 and Milsim West when I can as a player, and I love just enjoying this game as a player. But being the game master is so uniquely rewarding. There's nothing better than when people come up to you and say that they had so much fun at your game. It is like crack. It's a drug. I'm addicted. I need it in my veins. Oh, I'm sorry you had to see that. But thank you all for watching again, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.